Good morning, everyone. My name's Wayne Kern. I'm the commander of Post 165 of the American Legion here in Miamisburg. And we're here today to celebrate Veterans Day. I'm so happy to see all the young people out here today. I hope you enjoy our service. We have beautiful weather and we have a nice day to honor our veterans. Veterans Day originated as Armistice Day on November 11th, 1919. It was the first anniversary of the end of World War I. It was the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th hour when the armistice was signed. That's why we celebrate Veterans Day at 11 o'clock on this day. It was passed by Congress in a resolution in 1926 that there would be an annual observance. And November 11th became a national holiday in 1938. On Veterans Day, we pay tribute to all the service men and women, past and present, mainly the living ones, who have served their country honorably during war and during peacetime. I'd like to begin our service this morning with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please stand, uncover, and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'd now like to ask our chaplain of the Honor Guard, Don Lacey, to offer an invocation.
Please remain uncovered, and in your own way, join me in this prayer. Our God and Supreme Commander of all our veterans, I ask that you bless each person who came here today to recognize and to thank our veterans for their service. Guide the new leaders of this great country and those that return to office. Help them make the right decisions for our military, our veterans, and the citizens of these United States. We ask for your presence and your blessing upon this program today as we acknowledge every veteran who served in our armed forces. From the Revolutionary War through today's war in the Middle East, we have had women and men serve in our armed forces. Bless each one. Be near to them as they remember their experiences during the time that they served. There are many of our soldiers, Marines, sailors, and airmen who have served in one of our wars and was wounded. Be with them and help them in their healing. Help their loved ones, their caregivers, to be patient and to know how to aid in their loved ones' healing process. We ask you to bless and care for the soldiers who are at this moment serving in a foreign country. Keep them in your love as they fulfill their missions, protecting our country and our children. Quiet the fears of their families who await their loved ones' return. Bless all those who gather and will gather today at the 11th hour on this 11th day of November as they honor our veterans. This is our prayer. Amen.
Thank you very much, Don. It is with a great pleasure that I introduce the Mayor of Miamisburg, the Honorable Dick Church, who will offer our Veterans Day key address. Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Before I begin, there are a few people I would like to acknowledge that are in the audience. We thank all of you for being here to honor our veterans today. I do want to give special shout outs to the Miami Valley Communications Council, Liberty Lord is on the camera. I do also want to thank Kinder School also for being here. Jeremy Saylor is the principal, and Dr. David Vale is the superintendent, and he's out in the audience also. Nice to have you here. I also want to thank the Parks and Recreation Department, the American Legion Post 165, and the Miamisburg Historical Society Veterans Committee. We have several city council people here today. You might have to help me out, guys, but Vice Mayor Mike McCabe, I saw. Councilwoman Sarah Clark, Councilwoman Michelle Collins, Councilman Tom Nicholas, and Councilman John Stalder. Carl Johnson's life matters. Carl is a 90-year-old veteran in Virginia. Carl was the last Tuskegee Airman to graduate from the famed school that produced so many heroic African-American aviators. According to a recent article in the Washington Post, the United States Army issued Carl a train ticket for a Pullman sleeping car so that he could get from Texas to Alabama for his military training in 1946. Carl recalled being told by the station manager that he and his fellow black soldiers were not allowed to use the Pullman. "You have to go to coach," they were ordered. Now, threatened with jail if they resisted, these soldiers rode for 24 hours and they were also denied the use of the train's dining car as well. Despite the dishonors, Carl would continue to treat his country better than many of his fellow citizens treated him. Carl would extend his military service for another 3 decades, serving in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. He would earn a Distinguished Flying Cross and 10 Air Medals and retire as a colonel. Air Force Staff Sergeant Brian McElroy and Tech Sergeant Jason L. Norton were military police officers. Unfortunately, they were unable to extend their military service. Their lives were tragically taken. Both were assigned to the 3rd Security Forces Squadron, Elmendorf Air Force Base, Alaska. Sergeants McElroy and Norton made the supreme sacrifice when their vehicle struck an IED while on patrol in Iraq on January the 22nd, 2006. Brian always made us laugh, and he always knew when to jump into a conversation to make us laugh even more. He was a family man and really enjoyed talking to his wife and his kids. His mother gave him a gold cross that he always wore around his neck to remind him to never lose his faith, Staff Sergeant Richard Clary said during the memorial service. He was the best father in the world, and I said that before anything happened, Christina Norton said of her husband, Jason. The 2 fallen veterans share the same coffin and headstone because their remains were intermingled from the blast and unidentifiable, according to Arlington Cemetery spokeswoman. But their character is easy to identify. Just look up the word hero. When then Governor Ronald Reagan introduced returning POW John McCain at a speaking engagement in 1975, the future president asked, "Where do we find such men?" He was speaking to the many veterans when he answered, "We find them in our streets, in the offices, the shops, and the working places of our country, and on the farms." In other words, President Reagan was referring to ordinary people accomplishing extraordinary things. And it just isn't the men. Grace Murray of New York was a curious child. At the age of 7, she dismantled an alarm clock just to see how it worked. Later, she became one of the first programmers of the Harvard Mark I computer and would invent the computer language known as COBOL. The world was fortunate to benefit from the brilliant mind of the woman known by friends and admirers as Amazing Grace, and known by the United States Navy as Rear Admiral Grace Hopper. Although she left us in 1992, we can definitely say that the world is a better and smarter place because of Admiral Grace Hopper. My friends, veterans come in all shapes and sizes, young and old, rich and poor, black and white, and nearly every category in between. They are men and women who served or still serve America. And their families are diverse as well. We need to remember the wives who briefly but anxiously dreaded every doorbell or telephone call as their husbands witnessed unspeakable horrors while fighting in hard-to-pronounce villages that most Americans could never find on a map. We need to remember the modern military families who deal with frequent address changes, interrupted unemployment by spouses, and an unequal sharing of parental responsibilities. For what they do for us, military families should also be honored on Veterans Day. While their numbers are decreasing, too many veterans are still homeless. As recently as 2014, an estimated 50,000 veterans were identified as homeless in communities around the nation. This is roughly the population of Galveston, Texas. And let us remember the estimated 20 veterans a day who commit suicide, and that approximately 20% of Iraq and Afghanistan veterans have experienced post-traumatic stress disorder. Veterans still face long wait times to use many VA facilities, and the care, while often good, still needs to be worthy of the veterans who served this great nation. We should regularly remind employers that veterans have been tested under pressure, have completed unique training, and have displayed the leadership qualities that would benefit almost any organization. Hiring veterans is not just a way to show gratitude, it is simply smart business. Veterans Day is an important but symbolic way of saying thanks. We should insist that our elected officials produce meaningful laws and public policies that will enhance the quality of life for our veterans and their families. The American Legion and the VFW, they are dedicated to remembering the legacy of all veterans, because what these men and women have done for us matters to America. It matters to the people overseas who were liberated from tyranny due to the sacrifices of our military members. From defeating communism, fascism, and imperialism, to liberating slaves, keeping the peace during the Cold War, and battling terrorism today, veterans have accomplished remarkable things throughout our nation's history. Ladies and gentlemen, veterans have preserved the country that we all love so much. Thank you again for allowing me to speak on behalf of our nation's veterans. God bless you for being here, and God bless our nation's veterans, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you very much, Mayor Church. I'd now like to ask Jim Caldwell to, he has some patriotic remarks to make. Jim was a past commander of the Sandusky branch of the American Legion, and he and his wife Pat moved to Miamisburg a few years ago, and he's become very active on our Legion post, and we're very fortunate to have Jim among us.
As a retired teacher and coach, I'm very pleased and proud to see these young citizens here learning the history of your country and about those who have preserved that history and country is a very important part of your education. It's great to see that it has been included here, and I thank you for being here. I guess maybe that train's across the river. We'll give it a try. My reading today is titled The Final Inspection. The author is unknown. The soldier stood and faced God, which must always come to pass. He hoped his shoes were shining, just as bright as his brass. Step forward, soldier. How shall I deal with you? Have you always turned the other cheek? To my church, have you been true? The soldier squared his shoulders and said, No, Lord, I guess I ain't. Because those of us who carry guns can't always be a saint. I've had to work on Sundays, and at times my talk was tough. Sometimes I've been violent because the world is awfully rough. But I never took a penny that wasn't mine to keep. Though I worked a lot of overtime when the bills got just too steep. I never passed a cry for help, though at times I shook with fear. And sometimes, God, forgive me, I've wept unmanly tears. And I know I don't deserve a place among the people here. They never wanted me around except to calm their fears. And if you a place for me here, Lord, it needn't be so grand. I never expected or had too much, but if you don't, I'll understand. There was silence all around the throne, where the saints had often trod, as the soldier waited quietly for the judgment of his God. Step forward now, soldier. You've borne your burden well. Walk peacefully on heaven's streets. You've done your time in hell. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I'd now like to ask Vern Dunn, who has been the past commander of our American Legion post, is currently the first vice commander. He has some words to say.
Good morning, and before I begin, let me bring you up to date on what this is about. My granddaughter and her 8th grade class had an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. last month. They were given a challenge if they wanted to have the opportunity to lay their wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns. She was interested in that, so she began to write. They were going to be choosing 4 out of the 8th grade students, and 2 of them would be selected to have that honor. She writes, The Land of the Free by Libby Likens, Hilliard Memorial Middle School 8th grader. Your breath hitches, your heart wrenches. You feel the pressure and the weight belonging to the anchor of shock crushing your chest. You are pulled down into the sea of pain and sorrow. You thrash your limbs wildly, trying to escape agony's firm grasp on your wrist and swim to the surface. You scream for help, but the briny water just bubbles down your throat and up your nose, suffocating you. You see people frolicking happily at the surface, completely oblivious as to what is happening not even 3 meters below them. You are fighting your own battle in that sea of misery, the loss of a person so unbelievably dear to your heart. People die every day. It's inevitable. Our species is made to live an average of 80 years, then vanish from earthly existence. We have become so immune to hearing about death in other families' members' lives that we don't often think much of it and just go on with our lives. That is, until we experience the excruciating pain of loss ourselves. While any loss is torturous, sending a sharp, intolerable agony through your heart and tearing it in two. I can't even begin to fathom the loss of sacrifice of the families of someone who has been killed in the service. These remarkable families went through and continue to go through so much on a daily basis, while grieving the loss of loved ones they will never see again. These people carry astonishing strength and sacrifice on their shoulders. What about the people who were in the service, the exceptional men and women who were brave enough, selfless enough, and determined enough to put their lives on the line each and every day to keep freedom in our beautiful country? It is beyond important that we acknowledge each and every one of their sacrifices. These include their friends, their families, and unfortunately in this case, their lives. Beige combat boots trampled aside on earth and they marched through battlefields. Tears mourning the death of their comrades may have leaked from their eyes and streaked down their faces, but they pushed through it. Many of them were drafted away from their families and their lives back home. While our country's freedom, shooting, slashing their opponents in the attempt to exempt us from the rule and wrath of other nations, they are our heroes. I believe that many citizens of the United States take this for granted. While they may be wallowing in complaint that we have to read a chapter of Animal Farm for our English homework, these people are lying in their graves after sacrificing their lives for this country. While some daily situations may seem problematic to us, they are truly nothing on the scale compared to that of our soldiers. If they had never been here, our lives would be totally different, and the bare minimum that we can do is honor and respect them. I strongly believe that it is my obligation to recognize and appreciate what these men and women have done for the United States. An exceptional way for me to do this is to lay the wreath at the Tomb of the Unknowns, located in Arlington National Cemetery. I see fulfilling this honor as a way thanking those who have died in battle. By just waltzing through my daily 8th grade life, I feel as if I am not doing enough in recognizing those who have utterly changed our immediate world. Even just attending the ceremony is not enough in my opinion, as I have far more to owe to these extraordinary figures. However, even though partaking in this event shows great appreciation, the wreath expresses just a simple gratitude compared to the sacrifices of our heroes. You may be pondering as to why I should receive the honor of laying the wreath. Well, if I were you, I would strongly consider myself for this honor due to several reasons. First, as I have expressed, I am devoted to repaying our country's forces for their extreme sacrifice. As said, I am determined to go the extra mile, as our heroes did, in honoring this country and the sensational people who have shaped and kept our freedom. I often take time of this to think myself about this. I will go as far as possible to make sure these leaders are honored and respected properly. In addition, I am respectful in the classroom. Without a doubt, I will ensure that I, as well as my peers, act appropriately during the ceremony. I am a leader that hopes to positively influence others, even if it is on a small scale compared to the way our brave men and women have led. I have the admirable and influential attributes to enforcing positive behavior. It is very important that everyone is controlling their actions, pressing pause, when we are visiting the Arlington National Cemetery, better yet, the whole trip. Because we are not only representing our school, our town, and our state, but also paying our respects and gratitude for the men and women who died representing our country in the name of freedom. Lastly, I would like to express simple words of thanks to the phenomenal people who I have talked about honoring today. As aforementioned, these mortals, as well as their families, have made unfathomable sacrifices in which these coming few words are incomparable. However, I am still devoted to making sure these people receive the recognition they deserve, even in the slightest. American heroes, I cannot thank you enough for being the reason our country is the land of the free and the home of the brave. And in closing, I would like to say she was one of the two that had the honor of laying the wreath at the tomb. Thank you.
Thank you, Vern. Now I'd like to ask Randy Staley, the chairman of the Historical Society Veterans Committee, to give us an address.
Back in October, we dedicated a flagpole at the Hillgrove Cemetery, and Mayor Church in 2015 at the Memorial Day service at Hillgrove, he mentioned, made a comment of, where's a flagpole? And through some researching and so forth, we made a discovery that as far as we know, Hillgrove never had a flagpole out there. So consequently, the Historical Society Veterans Committee and the Legion provided that flagpole, and it was dedicated on the 20th of October. The interesting part of that is Hillgrove Cemetery was founded in 1863, and it was incorporated in March of 1864. And what they wanted to do was to have a cemetery out on the eastern side of the town, where it was more quiet than it was down here in the center of town, and combine the three cemeteries, which was the Canal Cemetery at First and Central. The Library Park, we also had a cemetery here that was back over towards the railroad, and Cedar Grove up on Kircher Street. At the time, they established 4 city lots to move those bodies to Hillgrove, and they established a soldier's lot. And the soldier's lot is across from the Treon lot at the west side of Section 8 at the cemetery. The veterans, we have veterans buried at Hillgrove Cemetery that goes clear back to the Revolutionary War. We have 5 veterans from the Revolutionary War buried there, 2 from 1812, 3 from the Mexican War, 75 from the Civil War, 3 for Spanish-American War, and then we go on beyond. There's hundreds of veterans buried at Hillgrove. In the veterans lot, there's 2 that served the Mexican War, one who died in the Mexican War and the other one who served both in the Mexican War and the Civil War. There were 12 from the Civil War, and then there is one buried there. It was buried in 1904 in a Filipino War which occurred before World War I. Also at Hillgrove, there's a couple of others that I'd like to mention that's buried there. Is World War I veteran. His name was Bill Hughes. He was a mayor here at Miamisburg, councilman member. He served in the National Guard, and he was a commander of the troop that was here during the 1913 flood, after the flood. That he went to Europe in World War I, and he was awarded 2 Silver Stars, one in Germany and one in France, which required action by Congress in order to get the 2 Silver Stars. Another individual that's at Hillgrove was Robert J. Hansen, was a crew member on the airship Roma, R-O-M-A, that was in 1922 that was had crashed. So really we have a lot of veterans out there of sacred grounds being at Hillgrove. The other thing I'd like to mention today that some of our records that's kind of interesting, besides Bill Hughes, who has 2 Silver Stars, and that's very unusual for an individual, we have Joe Fite, who served in World War II, Richard Staley, who served in World War II, Frank Clary, who also served in World War II, Gary McKitty, who was in Vietnam, and Darrell Pearson from Vietnam. Those are our 6 Miamisburgers that were honored with the Silver Star. The other thing I'd like to mention too is if you have any veterans, please come into the Historical Society and give us their name. We have an honor roll there of over 2,500 veterans in the various wars on this honor roll, and it's probably the largest list in the city of Dayton of actual names who served in wars from the Revolutionary War up through the present day. So if you would, come in and check to see if your loved one is there, and we would sure like to add them if they are not. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Randy. By the way, Bill Hughes, that Randy mentioned, receiving 2 Silver Stars, was the first commander of the American Legion here in Miamisburg. Our American Legion post was organized by a group of men that met in the Baum Opera House at all members of the service during World War I. And we asked for our charter in 1919. That was the first year the American Legion was organized and presented a charter. We received our charter in 1920, so we're one of the oldest American Legions around. And it's an honor to be part of that organization. Before we close today, I'd like to read what a veteran is. Some veterans bear visible scars of their service. A missing limb, a jagged scar, a certain look in the eye. Others carry the evidence inside them. A pin holding a bone together, a piece of shrapnel in the leg, or perhaps another sort of inner scar. Except for parades, however, the men and women who have kept America safe wear no badge or emblem. You can't tell a veteran just by looking. He is the cop on the beat who spent 6 months in Saudi Arabia sweating 2 gallons a day, making sure the armored personnel carriers didn't run out of fuel. She is the nurse who fought against futility and went to sleep at night sobbing for 2 solid years in Da Nang. He is the parade riding legionnaire who pins his ribbons and medals on with a prosthetic hand. He is the POW who went away one person and came back another, or didn't come back at all. He is the career quartermaster who watches the ribbons and medals pass him by. He is the old guy bagging groceries at the supermarket, palsied now and aggravatingly slow, who helped liberate a Nazi death camp and who wishes all day long that his wife were still here to hold him when the nightmares come. He is ordinary and yet extraordinary human being. He is a perfect person who offered his life's most vital years in the service to his country, and who sacrifices his ambitions so others would not have to sacrifice theirs. So remember, each time you see someone who has served his country, just lean over and say thank you. That's all the person may need. And in most cases, it will mean more than any of the medals they could have been awarded or were awarded. 2 little words of thanks. Thank you. So I hope everybody says thank you for their service to the veterans today. Would all the veterans that are here today raise their hand? Thank you very much. It's an honor to have you here. Kinder School presented the Legion with a number of letters the children made, and they also made a nice banner we're going to hang down at the Legion. So thanks to all you boys and girls that came out today, and thanks for giving us a banner which we'll display proudly down at the Legion. Now I'd like to ask our honor guard to salute all our veterans.
Place your hands over your heart.
Hands left. Ready. Aim. Fire. Ready. Aim. Fire. Ready. Aim. Fire. Stand right. Set. Fire.
Our commander of all veterans and God of us all, thank you for being here with us during this service. Thank you for being with our veterans, our special men and women who served for the purpose of preserving our freedoms. I ask that you remind each American citizen throughout this country to remember to thank our veterans every day of the year, not just on Veterans Day. This is our prayer from our heart. Amen.